Hello, welcome to part 2 of the SARA video series on how to support survivors of sexual and relationship violence, stalking, sexual harassment, and gender-based discrimination. I'd like to introduce our facilitators for today. We are all from the SARA team. My name is Anna Marie Safranek. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I am a SARA team student staff member.
Hi everyone, my name is Grace Pungafari. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the SARA team Assistant Director, Education Outreach Manager.
Hi there, my name is Carly Flannery. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the SARA team director.
In this video, we will be focusing on the steps for supporting a survivor in the first 2 hours after a disclosure is made. We will be touching on 4 key areas. 1, specific considerations and the priority actions to take. 2, how to prepare for having a conversation about the disclosure. 3, how to approach the conversation and the best practices. And 4, what to do after having that conversation. When someone makes a disclosure of sexual or relationship violence to you, it can not only be a difficult decision for the survivor to make, but it can represent an immense extension of trust. So be sure to approach the situation in a supportive, non-judgmental, and sensitive way. Every survivor is different, and there is no one-size-fits-all to supporting, healing, or reporting. We like to emphasize the necessity of a trauma-informed approach, so please be sure to watch part 1 of the Supporting a Survivor series, which focuses on how to be trauma-informed and on being mindful of how oppressive factors and cultural barriers like racism, sexism, classism, and other isms can impact the experience of the survivor.
The most important thing you can do is educate yourself on the resources and options available to survivors. Additionally, reporting is an important topic to be familiar with, and we are commonly asked about different methods of reporting, how to report, and what reporting entails. So we really encourage you to take a look at a separate video that we have on reporting. And if you need assistance in finding the video, please feel free to email us at saraoffice@stanford.edu. So when taking steps to prepare and educate yourself about supporting a survivor, it's important to understand what a survivor may be looking for and the different options available depending on the need and the time sensitivity. We recommend utilizing sexual violence support.stanford.edu and relationship violence support.stanford.edu, which provides helpful resources and comprehensive guides regarding the actions to consider for survivors, such as seeking a SART exam, reviewing reporting options and Stanford policies, and ways to contact a support person. After disclosure of sexual or relationship violence is made, a lot of people ask what they should be doing first in order to support the survivor. And what we recommend is that it's helpful to think about this in 2 parts, with immediate needs and long-term needs for how to support a survivor. It's critical to triage the need of the survivor, and priority number 1 should always be the survivor's safety and well-being. Remember, every survivor is different, so there can be fluidity between categorizing needs as immediate or long-term. For each survivor, situational factors can change something from being immediate to long-term and vice versa. However, because of specific policies and safety and medical considerations, there will be concerns that will be more time-sensitive than others, such as SART exams and needs that require medical attention. So the best thing to do that we recommend is to listen to the survivor's concerns and work with them to determine how time sensitive their needs might be, while also being clear on the factors that influence immediacy. If it is still not so clear when the survivor's experience took place or if medical assistance is immediately needed, it may be helpful to ask them explicitly. You can use such questions like, when did this take place? Is medical assistance necessary? Would you want to proceed with a SART exam?
SART exams are time sensitive, so if the survivor wishes to proceed with one, have the resources and references easily available. Now we'll go a bit more in depth about some of the information that you should know about SART exams. A SART exam can do 2 things. 1, it can provide sensitive, thorough medical care, and 2, it can collect evidence that may be helpful in the prosecution of a survivor's case. It's important to note that although medical personnel are required by California law to report to the police instances in which a SART process is initiated, Survivors have the right to choose not to report a sexual assault to law enforcement or participate in an investigation. Survivors also have the right to change their minds at a later time. Both the medical personnel and certified advocate can provide more information about these options. Survivors can try to not eat, drink, wash, or brush prior to the exam. However, if they have done any of these, they can still get the exam. Remember, they have the right to consent to or decline any part of the exam at any time. And lastly, they have the right to a certified advocate present who can maintain privileged communication and will have knowledge of medical rights and the criminal legal system. They can provide confidential and anonymous services throughout the medical, legal, and administrative procedures of the SART exam. For more information about SART exams, visit sexualviolencesupport.stanford.edu. Once you have addressed the survivor's most urgent needs, like proceeding with the SART exam, and have ensured their safety and well-being, you can begin to discuss their long-term needs. There is more latitude in the long term, so there's a wider spectrum of actions and options to be considered. An intentional conversation with the survivor, if they wish to continue discussing with you, can be a helpful way to assess their needs and provide assistance. We'll continue to discuss how to have this conversation and the important things to keep in mind when providing non-urgent support.
When preparing to have this conversation, here are some helpful actions and considerations. First, we recommend that you educate yourself on the options for resources and discuss them with the survivor. Second, remember that a survivor's encounter with you is only one stop on their journey to recovery. Regardless of your concern or best intentions, you will not be their sole source of healing. Acknowledge and accept your limitations and know when to ask for help. And lastly, practice regular, healthy self-care habits in order to provide care and support to a survivor. You have to take care of yourself and seek support for yourself if you need it.
There are four goals that you should be mindful of and use as guidelines when initiating a conversation with a survivor after a disclosure is made. Your goals should be to 1. Determine and address a survivor's prioritized concerns. 2. Provide support and assistance. 3. Identify options and provide information to facilitate a survivor's informed decision. And 4. Make appropriate referrals. Be sure to always let the survivor guide the situation. If the survivor at any point doesn't wish to continue the discussion, or if they decide to consult with someone else, then respect that decision. Disclosing an experience of sexual or relationship violence can be an extremely trying and emotional process for the survivor. So be patient and don't force the survivor to continue the conversation if they don't wish to, or if they feel it's re-traumatizing.
There are a lot of important guidelines that need to be maintained in order to have a supportive conversation with the survivor. Be sure to continually check back and relearn this information so that you are prepared and familiar with these best practices. First and foremost, inform the survivor if your role requires you to notify professional staff. Disclose any reporting obligations at the start of the conversation so that the survivor can seek confidential resources like the confidential support team if they are not comfortable with your non-confidential role. Next, ensure and secure privacy. Try not to discuss in a public space or where other people could interrupt or overhear. Making sure the survivor feels safe and comfortable is really important. Focus on empowerment, not enabling them or taking ownership of the situation. Reinforcing the survivor's agency is vital. Next, let the survivor tell the story. Allow them to lead the narrative and try not to unnecessarily interject. Provide options, not advice. Try to avoid voicing your personal opinions about what the survivor should do. The best practice is to provide support and options that are centered on the survivor's situation and not your own. When providing referrals, it's important to base them on the survivor's needs and concerns. Try to provide an array of options for additional support and guidance. Keep in mind services like the YWCA Silicon Valley and CAPS, as well as offices like Residential Education Deans or the Office for Religious Life.
It's important to provide culturally specific responses to cultural barriers or oppressive factors the survivor could be facing. Be mindful of how cultural and institutional barriers could have impacted the nature of the survivor's disclosure and the concerns. For instance, it can be helpful to know the resources that are available in a variety of different languages in case survivor has a language barrier that could be such as providing a PDF guide with a translated version or referring to a support network that specializes in that language. If you want to learn more about the different cultural and institutional barriers and what to be mindful of, refer to part 1 of this series. Lastly, throughout the conversation, try to discuss how the survivor wants to proceed in the following areas of healing, support, medical, and reporting. First, for support, support refers to the confidential and non-confidential options that provide resources, information, and space to process. For healing options, that means to provide an array of methods like yoga, art, writing, music, prayer, etc., that can help the survivor's healing process. It's important to be cognizant of alternative modalities of healing that go beyond traditional talk therapy. For medical options, these can be intended to provide treatment for injuries and STI testing, diagnosis, and treatment, and referrals for medical complications, sexual or relationship violence related issues. Reporting resources are intended to give the survivor the option to proceed with filing a formal complaint. So for example, reporting options should be provided if the survivor wants more formal housing, education, accommodations, or if they wish to proceed with an investigation. Be sure to educate yourself on the reporting processes, options, and their respective terms of confidentiality. To learn more about options for support, healing, medical, and reporting, please visit sexualviolencesupport.stanford.edu.
Language is vital in your validation of a survivor's experience and when reinforcing a survivor's agency. Here are some phrases that can be useful when having a conversation after a disclosure. I'm sorry this happened to you. I believe you. It's not your fault. No one deserves to be hurt in this way. You have options. You did what you needed to do to survive, and I'm willing to do what I can to help you. Additionally, your tone and the way you speak can also play a critical role in the support you offer. Be sure to try and maintain a steady and calm tone, even if it may be difficult for you or if you feel a sense of panic. It's important to avoid inciting any additional anxiety or negative emotions in the survivor. If at any point you feel overwhelmed, try to take a few calming breaths or a few moments to collect your thoughts and proceed with the conversation.
After you have a conversation with a survivor about their disclosure, there are a few steps you should continue to take. Exercise discretion and do not share the incident with others without the survivor's consent. Notify appropriate staff if this is required in your role as an employee, including residential student staff. If the survivor gives their consent, follow up with them after the conversation and check on their continued needs and concerns. Practice regular, healthy self-care habits. Be sure to acknowledge any feelings or difficulties you may be having after a survivor discloses their experience to you. Seek support for yourself and be aware of your own limitations.
We also want to take a moment to be explicit regarding how police involvement may be included in specific processes and options. We're not endorsing the use of law enforcement, but rather we wish to uphold a priority of survivor agency, whether or not a survivor chooses to engage with police or not. By being explicit about the options that may involve police, we wish to empower survivors and their supporters to make choices that align with their safety and prioritizes a survivor's right to agency. So first of all survivors have the right to decide to what extent to involve or not involve law enforcement. However, specific processes and options could include police involvement, such as enforcing and serving civil restraining orders and requesting emergency protective restraining orders. Secondly, it can be difficult to figure out what a survivor's options are when engaging with law enforcement. So due to the complexity of these decisions in campus and community processes, we recommend consulting with a resource such as Confidential Support Team or the SART team. To understand what choices survivors have regarding police involvement, feel free to consult those resources as well as others.
It can be difficult to know what to do after a survivor discloses an experience with sexual and/or relationship violence. but taking the time to educate yourself on the options and resources available and learning the best practices when providing help is a really important first step in becoming a better support system. Remember, prioritize the urgent needs of the survivor first, like their safety and well-being. After immediate needs are addressed, focus on the long-term needs of the survivor. During that conversation, your goal should be to determine and address the survivor's prioritized concerns, provide support and assistance, identify options and provide information, and make appropriate referrals. To continue your learning, there are a variety of SARA videos that you can watch, or visit sara.stanford.edu/learn more for more information. Lastly, if you'd like to contact us, please email saraoffice@stanford.edu and we can schedule an appointment. Thank you for listening and learning.